The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
Good evening, folks. News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the Internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube. And on Gary's blog, www.garybaumgarten.com, where you are invited to comment whether you agree with Gary or not. And thanks to our friends on CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated coast to coast across the United States to 12 million additional households. I'm your guest host, Boaz Frankel, for this Friday afternoon. A programming note before we get started. Gary Baumgarten, host of the show News Talk Online here on paltalk.com, has been out all week due to the death of his father. He will be back on Monday to pick up on the show and to continue to be your faithful host of News Talk Online here on paltalk.com on Monday. So we will all welcome him back, and I, for one, will be glad to see him back. I'm sure everybody else will. But before that happens, we have a serious problem, my friends. That's right. The economy and our society as a society of instant gratification. I want, but I don't get. That's what my parents used to say to me, and whilst it may be referring to manners in general, I think it's also a good representation of how society used to be 30 and 40 years ago. However, everything's changed now, and it's turned into a world where we want something, you get it, no questions asked. At the end of the day, for all that we attempt to convince ourselves that humans live in a world apart, you know, we're still animals. We live in a flesh and blood body whose stomach demands food and water, and whose hormones influence our behavior in ways we're rarely aware of. Now, as we try to make sense of our lives in these interesting times, we're vulnerable to these physical and psychological needs that take over in our weaker moments. Did we really need to eat the entire packet of chocolate biscuits? Certainly not now that we feel sick to the stomach. Did we really mean to spend 3 hours looking for porn on the Internet? Not now that we feel like an utter waste of space. Of course, the modern world doesn't make life any easier for us. Entire professions like advertising and marketing make a living by preying upon our weakness for instant gratification. Whether it's by bright flashing lights, a billboard cleavage next to the latest car on the market, or any other combination of psychological hints, these schemes only work because of our quintessential weakness. If we were in total control of ourselves, the advertisers would be out of a job. We'd laugh at the notion that a new car will improve our sex life. But as it is, the advertisers are laughing their way to the bank. And it doesn't stop there. Banks convince us that the answer to our problems is yet another credit card. Fad dieters play upon our fears of appearing too fat and thus never getting laid, whilst cell phones companies tell us our kids will be much safer if we can contact them all times. Fear and desire, it would seem, are what make the economical world go round. Well, for most of human history, we simply couldn't overconsume. We didn't have complex gadgets for communication, and overeating simply wasn't an option for most people when they could barely feed themselves. When most people were poor, the main opportunities for instant gratification lay in the relatively cheap diversions of sex and alcohol, believe it or not, and both, of course, had often hazardous economic implications. Now that we live in a world where there's a surplus of products and anyone in the first world can eat their own body weight in cake every week, if they so choose. Around 1.6 billion people around the world are now considered overweight or obese by the World Health Organization. Now that we can get our hands on enough food, about a quarter of the world's population just can't stop eating. It just feels too good. Or consider the online gaming addictions that confine new generations to their bedrooms as they find instant gratification in raiding other guilds in the world of Warcraft. Far easier than making real friends and finding out who they really are and what they want. Or just look how often you check your email. Is it the first thing you do in the morning? Do you have alerts on your computer to tell you when your friends have signed in or you have a new message? Do you risk cancer by carrying your phone close to your body, just in case you miss a call? The latest technology to cash in on our desire for instant gratification is a service called Twitter that can be installed on your phone or on your computer. Essentially, you give an online report of what you're thinking, doing, or planning, and your network or friends can read, "Just got out of the shower," "Feeling horny," or "Can't stop listening to Britney Spears." Does anyone need to know these things? Probably not, but hey, it helps to pass the time. The only resolution for this disease is to understand that it is limits that give these things meaning. Meaning, a good movie is good until it reaches the end of its second hour, and if it's not over, you start getting bored of that movie. Chocolate cake is tasty, but you enjoy it a lot more if you don't eat it every day. To give meaning to our lives, it's important to place limits. Given that you have all morning to read your email, it's nice to take a cup of coffee and sit quietly for a few moments before taking on the world. Given that people can call you all day or leave a message, it's really nice to be able to talk to a friend without your cell phone going off halfway through the conversation. Instant gratification, is that the name of the game today? If it is, that is all going to change. Of course, that's in my opinion. The credit card you so easily pulled out to buy something you really didn't need, like an extra shirt, a new cell phone? Well, we are going to have to change our way of life soon enough. The effects of our failing economy on the individual, by the way, when I mentioned individual, that means you, me, and everyone else.